All right, so I got a question today from Patrick, and he asks, after a couple of days of configuring my new OM-1, I cannot find the way to get the highlights and shadows blown indicator I had on my EM1 Mark III viewfinder. I've tried many different options, but no avail. Any ideas? Thanks. All right, so there's lots of different ways to show information on the live view and the EVF, and I can see where it's a little confusing because you're seeing the highlight shadow information on the live view, but you're not seeing it in the EVF. And that's because you can configure the information you see on the live view to be different than what you see in the EVF, or you can configure them so that they mirror each other. So what you see on the live view is always going to be what you see in the EVF. And the short answer is just set your EVF style to number 3, and then that way what you see on the live view will be mirrored in the EVF. But for the benefit of everyone watching, I'm going to walk through the entire menu for setting up the information displays on the live view and the EVF. All right, so let's start in the menu and go over here to the cog menu and then click over until you get to page 4. Now on page 4, this is where you control the information that you're going to see on the live view and also in the EVF. So let's start with the first line item, EVF style. So we have styles 1, 2, and 3. So style 1 is basically you see the image, and then at the bottom there's a blue bar with exposure information and some other stuff. We have a blue bar with white text. Style 2 is exactly the same, except that you have a black bar with white text. And then style 3 is the image with the information overlaid on top. Now, another difference between, say, style 1, 2, and 3 is if we look at style 2, you'll notice that the image is slightly shrunk a little bit to accommodate this bar of information at the bottom. Versus style 3, the image expands fully corner to corner in the EVF with the text overlaid. So if you wear glasses, you may be able to see the entire image using styles 1 or 2 because the image is actually shrunk a little bit, versus style 3, the corners might get clipped a little bit. Like I said, if you're looking through this with glasses, so your eye's not pressed up against the EVF, it's just back a little bit, right? So if you wear glasses, give style 1 and 2 a try and see if that helps. But another key difference between the first two styles and style 3 is that when you select style 3, it actually is going to mirror the information in the EVF with what you see on the back of your live view. So you're not going to be able to choose different information in a live view versus what you see on the back of the EVF. So this is the mirror option. But if you choose style 1 and 2, you can actually customize the information seen in EVF to be different than what you see on the back of the live view. All right, so let's just start with style 1. And we'll click OK there. So now we're on style 1. The next line item is for the information that you want to show on the back of the live view. The second line item here is the information that's going to be shown when you half press the shutter button. And then the next line item is the information that you want to see in the EVF. And because we chose style 1, we can actually choose different information shown in the EVF versus what we see in the live view. And then this line item is also for the EVF. And you can tell because there's a little rectangular icon in front of the camera icon and the shutter icon. That tells you that these two line items are for the EVF only. And this is turning the level meter on when you half press the shutter button in the EVF, but it's a little bit different than the level meters that we see in the center of the live view normally, and I'll show you that. And then this last line item is for information that you want to show when you have the camera physically in the movie mode. All right, now let's go up to the information settings here. This is for the live view. We'll click OK. And I have checked here image only. Information 1 is checked, but information 2 and 3 are unchecked. So these are the information panels or overlays that we're going to see in the live view. So to go back to the live view, right now I'm on information panel 1, which is why it was grayed out. I can't disable it while I'm on it. So I'd have to change to a different information panel. And the way you do that is you click the info button. So now we're on the image only panel, where there's no information displayed. If I click it again, it's going to toggle to the next line item, or the information 1 panel. And let's go back into the menu and go back into information settings and click on information panel 1. Now if we click over to the right, you'll notice that we have the histogram selected, and then we can select other information that we want to add to the display. So right now I have the histogram selected. So if I, add a little bit of light, you can see the histogram is right up here. Let's go back into the menu, select info settings, click over to the right, and let's turn on the highlight and shadow. So now when I lift up the camera, and let me give it something to look at here. I now have my highlight and shadow information, and right now the shadow information is showing, and the blue areas just indicate the areas that are clipping completely to black. And if I adjust the shutter speed and overexpose it, the red areas would indicate the areas that are completely clipped to white. So ideally you want to kind of get somewhere in between where there's no red or blue areas, but that's totally subjective, up to you how you want to expose your image. It's just an aid to help you with your exposures. Okay, let's go back into info settings and look at the other options here. We have our level gauge, we have battery information, and I wouldn't select this unless you're using the external battery grip. Otherwise the information is kind of redundant with your normal battery indicator up here. And then there's silent operation, and this is kind of an interesting feature that I actually use quite a bit. So let's go back out to our live view, and you'll see that we have our histogram, we have our level meters, and then we have our highlight shadow indicators. But now we also have silent operation ability, which basically means we don't have to rotate the dials to change the exposure settings like shutter speed and aperture. We can just touch the screen and make changes here, either in thirds of a stop or full stops if we hit the double arrow. And if I want to change the aperture, same thing. I can just make adjustments here in full stops or a third of a stop, depending on how you have your settings set in the menu. And this is very, very useful, obviously, for like video modes where you don't want to introduce any sound and you just want to change the aperture or shutter speed while you're recording. But I use it actually when I'm on a tripod doing bracketing, where I need to blend images together. And if I touch the camera at all while it's on a tripod, I could shift it, jar it slightly, even just 1 or 2 pixels, and then the alignment's going to be off. So just being able to touch the camera very lightly and make changes this way helps mitigate any kind of potential movement of the camera when it's on a tripod. All right, let's go back into the menu, and then if we just carry this logic forward, let's go back into information panel 1 and turn off everything except the histogram. We're going to activate information panel 2, and we have highlight shadow activated. We'll activate information panel 3, click over, and for this page I have the level gauge set, but let's select the silent operation instead, or in addition to the level gauge, and then go back out to the live view. So now all I have on this page is my histogram. We're on information panel 1. If I click the info button again, I'm now on information panel 2, which would be the highlight shadow meters or indicators. I click the information panel again. That brings up my level gauge and also my silent operation mode, where I can just touch the screen to make changes. All right, on the next screen, we have information by half pressing the shutter button. So let's click on that and see what options we have. We have off. So that means when we half press the shutter button, all the information is going to disappear, and we're just going to have the image view. When we select on 1, it's just going to show the basic exposure information. And then when we have on 2 selected, nothing's going to change. Basically, it's going to show the same information that it was when you weren't half pressing the shutter button. So let's go back to off, and I'll just demonstrate that. So I'm going to half press the shutter button, and you'll notice that the information disappears. And if I change this to on 1, you'll notice that the exposure information stays down here at the bottom, but everything else disappears. And then on 2 is simply don't do anything, just leave all the information live. So this is normally the way I like to have it personally, but again, personal preference. All right, now when we go into the EVF information settings, it's virtually identical. We have all the various panels we can turn on and off. We can select information we want to add to the information panel. And this is where you want to add or check the highlight and shadow box so that you can see the highlight shadow information in the EVF. And I have it basically set up the same way I had before. The only thing missing here is obviously the touchscreen or silent operation, because you're not going to touch inside the EVF. Now, one more thing is, because we're in EVF style 1, and it could be also EVF style 2 because it's basically the same thing, anything we set in here is separate from what we set in the live view info settings. So for example, I could have image only, turn off information panel 1. Let me double check panel 2, just the highlight and shadow. So when I have my eye up to the EVF, all I have to do is toggle the info button to page through those different information panels. And again, these information panel settings are different and independent of the information setting panels we set for the live view. Now, that said, if we have this set to style 3, this style is going to mirror the settings that we have set for the live view into the EVF, in which case any settings we do here are not going to matter, because now we're in a mirror mode where the information seen in the EVF is going to duplicate what we see in the live view. All right, now the next line item is the half press the shutter button to display the level gauge in the EVF. Now the level gauge that you see in the EVF is pretty much the same thing as you would see in the live view, is those two horizontal and vertical indicators. But this particular setting, level gauge on, when you half press the shutter button, basically shows the horizontal level gauge at the bottom of the information bar. So you need to be in style 1 or 2 for this to work. And what it's going to do is display the horizontal level gauge only in the bottom bar of the EVF. And then the last line item here is your information settings when you have the mode dial in movie mode. And it's the same idea here. We can do image only. We have information panel 1 where we can select additional information here that's related to recording movies. And we can add an additional information panel 2 if we want. And then one last thing I'll add, because there's a lot of different settings here, but the next one is the grid settings. We can have different grid settings for the live view and for the EVF, and also a different setting for when we're in movie mode. So I can set my live view to preset 2, which I think I set to green. I can turn on this grid pattern for the live view. And then for the EVF, I can turn the grid setting on and select maybe a crosshair type grid setting if I want, with different colors. So now the grid setting here is different than the grid setting in EVF. And of course, I can change the grid setting for movie mode if I want something different for that. So that's basically how you set up what information you see or don't see in the live view and the EVF, where you can have them different or mirror each other. It's really up to you. You can figure it the way that works best for you. And if you find these videos helpful, consider supporting the channel by buying me a coffee or leaving a small donation in the links below. They are greatly appreciated and they help me to continue making videos like this for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.